hold it. They're good? Not too heavy for you, Missy?
No.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Felicia.
And I'm Giancarlo.
And this is our review of
1944 Race to the Rhine.
Let me guess, it's about World War II?
It is. However, there's hardly any fighting in it. Well, that's not true. It's just it's a very different type of fighting. It's more about how to supply your troops and race against time to cross the Rhine, which is very interesting. In 1944 Race to the Rhine, players will play as one of the Allied commanders, Montgomery, Bragg, or Patton. They'll have to logistically supply their corps units with food, ammo, and gas as they move forward. Be the first to reach enemy line territory or have the most medals at the end of the game, and you'll win. Give each player a commander card with their starting deck, named the Pursuit deck, their control markers, 2 aid cards, and their core cards. On these, place the supply marked as listed on the card, gas, ammunition, and or food. Place more on the board to create the Allied stock track according to the number of players you are, and the remainder in separate pools to one side to create the reserve. Each player starts off with 6 trucks and another 6 will go in the Allied truck stock. Put a control marker for each player on level 1 of the logistic tracks, unless there's a player playing Brad, in which case you'll place it on 2. The Axis card will form a deck, and the number of Axis tokens to play will depend on the number of players. All will be used for a 3-player game. Medal tokens should be placed in a pool. Each player will place their core marker on their starting space on the board, and lastly determine sequence of play randomly and mark it on the play order track. You're now ready to play. The game does include 3 other types of tokens, weather, airborne units, and air support, but like the rulebook suggests, we'll review the game without them just for you to get the feel of the game.
During a player's turn, they'll perform 2 of the following actions in any order, and may choose to double up on the same action. Take Supply lets you either place supplies to your army supply base, your colored star on the map, or to a limited supply base, the ones with the supply marker icons. For your army supply base, you can either take 3 identical markers from the Allied supply stock, if there are any, or a set, 3 different ones, from the reserve. In limited supply bases, you may only choose to take a set.
Core movement will allow you to move your core up to 3 spaces, and you may only move onto spaces of your commander's color. Some spaces have 2 colors and are accessible to both players until one controls it. To move, a core must use up 1 of its gas. Then, if it enters an empty space, draw the top Pursuit card, or if it enters one with an Axis token, draw from the Axis deck. The Pursuit deck will contain many different things, from captured supplies, black markets, where you can exchange one supply for another, hard terrain, where it needs to spend another gas to keep moving, resistance, which allows you to take another action, starving civilians, which will reward you with 1 medal if you give them food, recon, which lets you look at the top card of either deck, or an Axis division. These are easier units compared to the ones in the Axis deck. When drawing one of these, combat will ensue. To defeat it, you must spend the required supply, and then keep the card and take a medal if it says so. Afterwards, you'll have to spend another gas to keep moving this turn should you choose to. If you don't have enough to defeat these units, you'll still spend all the supplies needed and retreat from where you came. When in the space that you've resolved the card successfully, you'll place a control marker on it. Should a corps move into a fortified area, it needs to spend 1 ammo first to take control of it. If you move onto a space with a medal and control it, you'll get a medal token. Note that core markers cannot enter spaces that contain another core marker. But dropping supplies onto spaces that's under your control can be done as a free action, which brings us to our next possible action, transport supplies.
To do so, you must place one of your trucks on an empty road. They can carry up to 5 supplies from one of the spaces to the other. The direction of the arrow doesn't matter. The number of trucks you can place during this action is indicated under the level of the current player's logistic level. You may also choose to leave supplies behind or load them onto the corp onto the current space as a free action. But since you can only place trucks on empty roads, the board will quickly fill up and get congested, which brings us to our final available action, take trucks.
Here you will take trucks from the Allied truck stock, and you can take up to your current truck draw listed under your current logistic level, or as many as there are left. You must remember you can never have more trucks than the player limit, also listed under the current logistic level. Should you take the last truck in the Allied truck stock, we pause the game and go to the supply check interface.
This step is not counted as a player action. A couple of things happen here. First, each logistic marker from all players go up a level. Each core on the board immediately uses one food. If they don't have a food, they'll be considered grounded and cannot move until they receive food. All trucks from the board are placed back into the allied truck stock. Extra trucks will be placed here as well whenever a player first reaches level 3 on the logistics chart. Once all these steps are done, the player resumes his turn if he has any actions left. At the end of their turn, players will do the Axis reaction step.
Here we'll place an Axis token anywhere on the board in an empty space next to a victory area containing an Axis flag, or in an adjacent space to an Axis token already in play. Instead of doing that, a player can choose to do a counterattack. To do so, a player may remove a control marker from another player. There are some rules to follow here, however. You cannot do so on a space that has one of their core adjacent to that space, and it must be adjacent to an area where there's an Axis marker or flag. Any space that gave a medal when occupied must have that player return that medal if lost through a counterattack. If the last Axis token is placed, and no players reach a victory space with a continuous controlled line to their army supply base for decisive victory, the player will finish their turn until the round is done and we move on to the scoring phase.
Every medal token is worth 1 point. Every Axis card with a medal also grants 1 point. Every 5 ammo crates on Axis and Pursuit cards that do not have a medal printed on them will grant the player 1 point. The player with the most points wins.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Race to the Rhine is a great game, and as such, the cons are so minuscule they will only be worth half a penalty for final scoring. First off, the components in the game are superb. This has to be one of the sturdiest boards we've ever seen, and it's really, really well made. The pictures on the cards lend themselves to the World War II theme quite well, and they even have that sepia look. Little things like that showed me they paid extreme attention to details. The supply markers could easily have all been cubes like the ammo crates, but in different colors. Instead, they made sure to have the gas look like oil barrels and food look like canned rations. It's very cool. The mechanics are quite innovative and offer something new to board gaming. And after you pass the steep learning curve, the game actually plays quite fast and it will only last for about 90 minutes. More so, there's not a lot of analysis paralysis going on that you would think would accompany a game like this. You can pretty much come up with your actions on other players' turn. Which brings us to our next half-point con, player interaction. Sure, there's some in terms of racing a player for that medal on objective spaces, to placing an Axis token to impede them or take away supplies and trucks from the allied stock, but essentially it still feels like you're playing a little solitaire. Should a player be lucky to get easy medal cards in their pursuit decks like starving civilians, well, there's not really anything you can do about it. So luck does play a little factor, but then again, it does so in real war as well. I lost the game because the sun would not shine for me to use my airborne units, which is true to life, which was oddly cool in a weird way. There's some advanced mechanics that we didn't talk about, like weather, airborne support, and units and commander abilities, which do add to replay value, including different modes from solo play to co-op. No points given or taken away from the rulebook, which is well written with examples, but had a couple of vital omissions. Like core limit on a space can only be found at the end of the book, and searching for something for specifics can be tricky. But Race to the Rhine does do a wonderful job of doing what it does, which in essence, if you think about it, is a game of making sure your army is quite well stocked with supplies. And that's something really different. It gets 8.5 medals out of 10, and we can't wait to see what Phalanx Games has in store for us next. British, and you have a little core that's the Canadians. So we're in the game. I'm serious. It's really cool.
I have a question though. What did the Canadians do during World War II?
That's mean. Canadians were really cool.
We brought water like we do now. We will fly over Afghanistan and here is some rice and water.
You know, we did a lot in World War II. There was a what's it called?
The more you know.
A faction unit, and they were called I can't remember, but they had the lightning bolt symbol back in 1944, 42.
Like Flash.
Wow, kind of like, like did that like
Buffalo
stormtroopers.
soldier.
Stormtroopers.
Taken from
Star Wars.
America.
I don't know exactly what they
brought
did,
to
but they were like the
America.
vanguard.
Fighting on the front lines.
She's not listening
Fighting
to me.
for
She's
America.
stuck in the 60s.
That is what Buffalo Soldier was written about.
I'm pretty sure Buffalo Soldier was about the Civil War in America.
No, it was about the fact that they were taken from their homeland, brought to America, and then forced to fight on the front lines during World War II.
Really?
You ever?
You sure?
100% sure.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you know the movie Something on St. Anne Street? It's a war movie, and it's all about that. All the black people were forced to be on the front lines during World War II.
Oh, kind of like Glory. You see Glory?
No.
That was good too. Yeah, Matthew
Miracle on
Broderick.
St. Anne? Something like that. And
Didn't see that one. But
Glory,
Glory was
yeah?
good. Yeah. It was about the Civil War, a little earlier, but it was about a black regiment, and they were sent to take, I believe it was the Alamo. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. We're
Fight
Canadian.
for rights.
Okay, so American
Red
history
squares.
is not our
Solidarity for the students pot and panning in the streets.
We went from World War II to the Civil War to what's happening here in Quebec about the students and pond patting.
It's all relative.
That's not me. That's supposed to be a
Pans,
pot.
pots and pans. Ding, 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 ding.